So, Yooka Laylee is finally here, and the reviews have been very polarizing. You guys should know the story by now, but if not, here's the rundown. The company Rare created a slew of legendary games back in the N64 era, under the trademark name Rareware. These iconic games included titles such as GoldenEye, Conker's Bad Fur Day, Donkey Kong 64, Perfect Dark, Killer Instinct, and most importantly in this video, Banjo Kazooie. 2002, Rareware was bought by Microsoft, but a lot of the team who had created these amazing games had left anyways. Rare then after made a bunch of games I either don't like or don't care enough to find out. Eventually, many of the old Rare team began to notice the missing void of a third Banjo Kazooie installment. After the critically rejected Banjo Kazooie nuts and everyone began to accept the fact that the old nostalgic duo will never truly return. But then, Playtonic Games was born, consisting of several key members from Rare way back when. Playtonic Games would create a goal that would appeal to anyone who has ever owned an N64, to create the spiritual successor to the old famous gaming duo, Banjo Kazooie. Over $2 million in Kickstarter funds later, here we are, with reviews ranging from, with what at least I've seen, 4 out of 10s to 9 out of 10s. Fucking crazy, right? It's safe to say that Yooka Laylee must be getting a lot of things right and a lot of things wrong. That's a pretty fair conclusion, right? Well, in my opinion, a lot has to do with how closely does any given critic, or player for that matter, expects Yooka Laylee to come close to Banjo Kazooie, and more importantly, how well does it hold up in today's standard of gaming. 3D platformers come way too far in between these days. But with games like the always beloved Mario series, Shovel Knight, and Meat Boy for example, I'm not convinced platformers are an outdated genre, a relic of the past. On top of this, it's very apparent that the projects come from the passion of people who truly enjoy what they do, not just for the money. Well, I mean, money is always a factor, let's be honest, but with companies like, I don't know, Activision and EA, one can infer that they can do the bare minimum to sell their titles, because they know they will get a shit ton of this either way, but I'm getting off track. The point is, Yooka Laylee has all the tools it needs to cement itself in the modern era of gaming. It really does. All the parts are there, but the question is, could they? Can Playtonic Games accomplish its goal it set out to finish? So after about 26 hours completing this game, 100%, I have a pretty solid opinion on Yooka Laylee. And with all the different opinions out there, I decided to split this video into 2 parts. 5 things Yooka Laylee did right, and 5 things they did wrong. But here we're going to talk about 5 things Yooka Laylee did right. So for number 1, I have to put the atmosphere. From its character designs to its wondrous music, Yooka Laylee has a very nostalgic feel to it, as you may or may not heard by now. If you are a fan of the old BK, no, not that BK, this one. Okay, yeah, I probably shouldn't call it that. If you are a huge fan of the old original Banjo Kazooie games, this game will definitely bring you back, no questions about it. The environments are very bright and gorgeous, and will give you a sense of adventure straight away. This game was meant for us fans of the old Banjo Kazooie, there's no doubt in my mind. In fact, it's hard for me to imagine how this game holds up to anyone who hasn't played it before. I'm sure that the fact that you have to read dialogue in 2017 would be off-putting to any newcomer. Accompanied by the sounds each character emits as they talk would annoy the hell out of anyone. But for me, it's part of the novel of the game. It definitely grew on me. This game, as you should know, is indeed a collectathon, but this was the strength of Banjo Kazooie and Banjo Tooie, and is the strength of Yooka Laylee. Hunting items and exploring is what these games are all about, and you go about this by platforming and puzzle solving. One of the complaints I hear about Yooka Laylee is that some of the puzzles are confusing and frustrating, to which I say 2 things. 1, Banjo was the exact same way, let's not lie to ourselves. It's that much more gratifying when you do figure it out. I wouldn't say any of these puzzles are unfair considering I figured them all out myself, and when I did figure these things out, I just blame myself for not figuring it out earlier. And 2, we live in the age of the internet, just look it up, which I don't recommend by the way, but if something takes that long to figure out, nothing's stopping you. If you're a completionist, then yeah, there'll be 1 or 2 things you're bound to look up. For number 2, Yooka Laylee gives a very satisfying sense of progression. Any fan of the old Banjo games will become immediately familiar with how the mechanics of the game work. Starting off, you only have the ability to duck, which never comes in handy, and the ability to, practice making out. Yeah ladies, I know what you like. Very soon after, you learn the spin attack. To be honest, there is a bit of hand-holding at first, but past the first 10 minutes, you're golden. Throughout the game, Trouser the Snake will sell you moves that you will need to progress through the levels, with many of the pages requiring one to several moves to be acquired. These moves ranges from rolling, which is essentially the same move when Kazooie picks up Banjo and starts walking around. Which, by the way, nobody seems to take note of, that a bird is carrying a fucking adult bear around on his back. Kazooie's gotta be ripped as fuck, man. Anyways, from rolling to turning invisible to creating bubbles underwater, don't ask how. And once you get the ability to fly, traveling the terrain becomes so much easier and convenient. There's been a few times where I look up at something wondering how the hell you get there, and that there's some kind of secret passage or puzzle, but no, it's simply just flying up there. Many of the collectibles and mechanics of Yooka Laylee matches Banjo Kazooie one-to-one. Pages are now jiggies, quills are the new notes. You have your health extenders as well, replacing the honeycomb thing. Take the 5 Jinjos and put 5 Ghost Riders, except this time around each ghost requires a different way of capturing them. For example, the blue one is invisible, the green one runs away from you like a little bitch, and the purple one does, wants something in its mouth apparently? Oh, I know exactly what you want. Mumbo is replaced with Dr. Puzz, and Mumbo tokens with Molly Cools. The new collectibles here are power extenders, extending your power bar if that isn't obvious enough, and play coins used to play Rextro's arcade games, which suck. You talk to SpongeBob here to equip certain perks called tonics. You can only use one at a time though. Use too many of these and you might be hooked on tonics. Was that a good 90s joke? But these perks can do things such as no fall damage or holding your breath longer underwater. For anyone who's trying to collect 100% of the items, the Hunter perk will do the trick. Here's how it works. A noise will trigger when you're nearby any rare items. This even works for quills when you only have a few left in the level, and considering there are about 200 in each, you're bound to miss one or two. Overall, you feel very accomplished with all the items and power-ups you have, and in turn you change your playstyle because of it. Yooka Laylee does a phenomenal job with preserving the aspects of Banjo Kazooie, though I'm unsure if this has the same effect for newcomers of this kind of gameplay, but for us it's perfect. Yooka Laylee consists of 5 different worlds to explore, all connected by a hub world of Hivory Towers, the Gruntilda's lair of this game if you will. Though there is no longer a dark, eerie, creepy factor to it, Hivory Towers is okay exploring. The 5 worlds connected to Grand Tomes, which are where most of your adventures will take place. Though some can argue that many of these areas are uninspired, and I'll save that for the next video, they all still have their charm to it. Another complaint I've heard about is how massive the worlds are, and how little there is to do in them. Hell, even in my Let's Talk About Yooka Laylee video, I brought up the worry that some worlds become so big that they start to feel monotonous. Now the question is, do they? Well, yes and no. While the worlds are massive, I don't feel like they're barren. I mean, this isn't Skyrim, but every area serves a purpose for the most part. A look back at Banjo Kazooie, they worked with a lot smaller areas, yet they feel bigger because there's so much to do. Though personally I didn't find this an issue in the game, and I wouldn't have mentioned it otherwise. There is a mechanic in Yooka Laylee where not only do you unlock worlds through tomes, but you can expand them, easily doubling the size of any world at least. I can appreciate this idea, I like it a lot, and I hope that this concept is included in any future Yooka Laylee installments. Basically the concept is to create so much added to the world that you experience it in a whole nother way. Places are added, doors are open. Oh wait, is that Shovel Knight? This works for the most part, and can actually prevent the feeling of monotony by leaving Tribalstack Tropics, for example, visiting a few other worlds first, then coming back to expand it and re-exploring it again. These worlds themselves, admittedly, are pretty basic. But then again, I didn't expect much. Usually a grass level, an ice level, a water level, a fire level, and you know, the basics. Galleon Galaxy does sound like a fun place to go to. A world theme that is crossed between space and pirates, so you know, space pirates. Fucking sick! Though this isn't a big point, I do think the humor of Yooka Laylee closely resembles that of Banjo Kazooie, and should be appreciated. It does add to the novel of Yooka Laylee and the whole spiritual successor thing. I suppose showing the examples of the kind of humor in Yooka Laylee would do it more justice than me talking about it. So here you go. So yeah, the Rare humor. It's there. So lastly, the game is all around enjoyable. I'm glad I bought this and played the game without a doubt. Of course, it has its flaws, which I'll get to in my next video, but Playtonic Games did what it set out to do in my opinion. I can easily see it as a continuation of Banjo Kazooie. Just rip off that sexy green lizard and that purple bat, and throw the shorts wearing bear with a bird in his backpack, and you'll have Banjo 3, at least as close as you could get. Even the game quizzes make a return, though I was worried they would overdo it. It occurs 3 different times in the game. Though I didn't get that same feeling of fuck yeah when I got a question right. Is Yooka Laylee a great game? That's debatable, but is it a fun, nostalgic platformer? I can say yes without a doubt. From the style of dialogues to scene transitions to almost every game mechanic that exists in Yooka Laylee lies the heart of the old Rare games that's been revitalized by wholeheartedly passionate people, which I can always appreciate. But whether it revitalized 3D platformers, I'm afraid I can't agree with that, at least for now. With such polarizing reception, it's very hard to tell. But I hope this isn't the last we see in a Playtonic Games, or the newly established duo that is Yooka Laylee. A sequel is set up nice and clear. It's even outright stated that Capital B, the main antagonist of Yooka Laylee, isn't the one in charge of the events of Yooka Laylee. And if there were a sequel, I would immediately support it any way I could, because I feel that Playtonic Games has potential, and I definitely will keep my eye out. Anyways, this is part 1 of my Yooka Laylee video, so if you enjoyed it and you want to see part 2 when it comes out, consider subscribing maybe, and a like would be appreciated too. And if you really like me, we can do that Yooka makeout session where we just dart our tongues back and forth as hard as we can. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. I will see you next week. Later babes.